The hallways of Westridge High always felt a mile long on Mondays. For Ty, a 16-year-old with dreams bigger than the small town he lived in, today felt especially endless. He adjusted his backpack, heavy with textbooks and the weight of starting another week at a school where he still felt like an outsider after moving here last year. "Hey, Ty." His younger sister Zoe's voice echoed down the corridor. At 14, she navigated the social landscape of high school with an ease that amazed him. Where he was quiet and thoughtful, she was outgoing and quick to make friends. "What's up?" he asked, noticing immediately that something was off in her usually bright expression. "Nothing," she said, but her eyes darted away too quickly. "Just wanted to say hi before class." Before he could press further, the warning bell rang, sending students scurrying in all directions. "We'll talk later," he called as she disappeared into the crowd. Throughout his morning classes, Ty couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Zoe had been acting strange all weekend too, staying in her room, barely touching her food, at dinner. Their parents had been too busy with their new jobs to notice, but Ty saw the changes. At lunch, he scanned the cafeteria for her familiar face. When he didn't see her, he headed outside to the courtyard where the freshmen sometimes ate. That's when he heard it. Laughter with that particular edge to it, the kind that comes at someone else's expense. He rounded the corner to see 3 older students surrounding his sister. Zoe was backed against the wall, clutching her lunch tray like a shield. Her face was flushed with embarrassment. "Why don't you go back where you came from?" one of them said, loud enough for Ty to hear. "Nobody wanted you here anyway." Something hot and protective surged through Ty's chest. His grandfather's words echoed in his mind. "There are fighters and there are protectors in this world. Know which one you are." Grandpa Ray had taught Ty and Zoe martial arts since they were little, not to hurt others, but as a way to build confidence and stay fit. "Self-defense is about protecting yourself and others," he always said. "It's the last resort, not the first response." Ty took a deep breath and walked forward, not with clenched fists but with calm purpose. "Hey," he said simply, positioning himself beside his sister. The 3 students turned to him, surprise flashing across their faces before settling back into sneers. Ty recognized them as juniors, Damon, the basketball team captain, and his 2 friends whose names Ty didn't know. "Look who it is," Damon said. "Big brother to the rescue." "We're just having lunch," Ty replied evenly. "Mind giving us some space?" "What if we don't?" one of the others challenged, stepping closer. Ty felt Zoe tense beside him but kept his own body relaxed, just as Grandpa Ray had taught him. "Then we have a problem that doesn't need to exist. This courtyard is big enough for everyone." Damon looked Ty up and down, clearly calculating whether this quiet kid might actually be trouble. Something in Ty's steady gaze must have given him pause. "Whatever," Damon finally said. "This spot's lame anyway." He nudged his friends, and they sauntered away, throwing glares over their shoulders. When they were out of earshot, Zoe let out a shaky breath. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Ty said, guiding her to a nearby bench. "How long has this been going on?" Zoe stared at her untouched lunch. "A couple weeks, it's not a big deal." "It is a big deal." "Why didn't you tell me?" She shrugged, picking at the edge of her sandwich. "You've got your own stuff to deal with. And I didn't want Mom and Dad to worry. They're stressed enough with the move and new jobs." Ty sat beside her, feeling a mixture of guilt and concern. Had he been so caught up in his own adjustment struggles that he'd missed what was happening to his sister? "What exactly have they been saying to you?" he asked gently. Zoe's eyes welled up, but she blinked the tears away quickly. "Just stupid stuff. That we don't belong here. That nobody wants to be friends with the new kids, that I'm—" She hesitated. "That I'm trying too hard to fit in." The bell signaling the end of lunch saved her from saying more, but Ty wasn't letting this go. "Meet me after school," he said. "We're talking about this." The afternoon dragged by, each class an exercise in restraint, as Ty fought the urge to hunt down Damon and his friends. But Grandpa Ray's voice kept him centered. "Your mind is your strongest muscle. Train it first." When the final bell rang, Ty found Zoe waiting by his locker, her eyes darting nervously around the hallway. "Let's go to Riverview Park," he suggested, "like we used to after school back home." 20 minutes later, they sat on swings in the nearly empty park, gently rocking back and forth as Zoe finally opened up about the past few weeks. The comments had started small, whispers when she walked by, being left out of group projects, social media posts that didn't name her but were obviously about the new girl who tries too hard. "Today was the first time they cornered me like that," she admitted. "Usually it's just comments in the hallway or in gym class." Ty listened, his hands tightening around the swing chains. "We need to tell Mom and Dad." "No." Zoe's response was immediate. "Dad will march down to the school and make everything worse, and Mom will just worry herself sick. They're both finally happy with their new jobs here." She wasn't wrong. Their father's protective instincts would likely escalate the situation, and their mother would blame herself for the family's mid-year move. "Then we need a plan," Ty said finally, "and I think I know where to start." That evening after dinner, Ty called their grandfather. At 72, Grandpa Ray still taught martial arts 3 days a week at the community center in their old neighborhood. More importantly, he had been a high school counselor for 30 years before retiring. "It's not just about knowing how to defend yourself physically," Grandpa Ray said after Ty explained the situation. "It's about mental preparation, strategic thinking, and knowing when to stand your ground." "But what if they don't back down next time?" Ty asked, thinking of Damon's challenging stare. "Then you remember everything I taught you about de-escalation. First, fighting is the last resort, not the first option. Most confrontations can be won with words and presence." Ty thought about how he'd felt standing beside his sister in the courtyard, scared inside but projecting calm confidence. It had worked today, but would it be enough tomorrow? "I'm coming to visit this weekend," Grandpa Ray announced suddenly. "It's been too long since I've seen my favorite grandkids anyway. We'll work on this together." That night, Ty lay awake long, after the house had gone quiet, staring at his ceiling. He thought about his sister's tears, about Damon's smug face, about the weight of being the new kids in a town that didn't seem to want them. But mostly, he thought about his grandfather's words. "There are fighters and there are protectors in this world. Know which one you are." Ty knew exactly which one he was, and starting tomorrow, he would make sure everyone at Westridge High knew it too. Not through his fists, but through something much more powerful. As dawn broke, Ty was already awake, formulating a plan. He'd start by documenting everything. Dates, times, exact words used. He'd reach out to the few friends he had made to build a support network for Zoe. And he'd find allies among the teachers without explicitly reporting the bullying yet. Respecting Zoe's wishes while still laying groundwork. Most importantly, he'd show Zoe how to carry herself with the quiet confidence that had made Damon hesitate today. The same confidence their grandfather had instilled in him through years of patient teaching. "We've got this," he whispered to himself as the first rays of sunlight crept through his window. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't happen overnight, but he would make sure his sister never had to face those bullies alone again. What he didn't know yet was that the solution would come from an unexpected place, and that by standing up for Zoe, he would finally find his own place at Westridge High. Tuesday morning arrived with unexpected sunshine after days of gray skies. Ty took it as a good sign as he and Zoe walked to school together, something they hadn't done since the first week after moving. "Remember what we talked about," Ty said as they approached the school building, head up, shoulders back. Zoe rolled her eyes but straightened her posture anyway. I know, act confident even when I'm not. And stick with my friends between classes and text you if anything happens." She glanced up at her brother. "You don't have to worry so much. Yesterday was probably just a one-time thing." But they both knew better. The morning passed without incident. Ty kept an eye out for Damon and his friends between classes but didn't see them. At lunch, he sat with Zoe and 2 of her friends, noticing how she gradually relaxed as the meal went on, even laughing at something one of the girls said. It was during sixth period when things changed. Ty was in the middle of a history test when his phone vibrated in his pocket. Students weren't supposed to have phones during tests, but he'd told Zoe to text him if she needed help, no matter what. Careful to keep the phone under his desk, he checked the message. "They're waiting by my locker. Don't come. I'm fine." She wasn't fine. Ty could feel it. He raised his hand, asked to use the restroom, and was out the door before the teacher could fully respond. The hallway was empty and quiet, his footsteps echoing as he hurried toward the freshman lockers. As he rounded the corner, he saw them. Damon and one of his friends from yesterday, plus two girls Ty didn't recognize, all surrounding Zoe at her locker. This time, though, Zoe wasn't backed against the wall. She stood her ground, arms crossed, face composed, even as one of the girls said something that made the others laugh. Ty slowed his pace, staying just out of sight to watch. His sister's voice carried clearly down the hallway. "I don't really care what you think," she was saying, "and I have better things to do than stand here listening to you." Damon stepped closer to her. "Nobody walks away from us. Watch me," Zoe replied, closing her locker and turning to leave. One of the girls grabbed Zoe's backpack, yanking her backward. In that instant, Ty saw his sister's composure crack, fear flashing across her face. He started forward, but someone else got there first. "Hey!" A tall girl with braided hair stepped between Zoe and the group. "Back off, Damon." "Stay out of this, Layla," Damon warned. "Not your business." "I'm making it my business," the girl, Layla, said firmly. She put an arm around Zoe's shoulders. "Come on, we'll be late for class." Ty held his breath as the two girls turned their backs on the group. For a tense moment, it seemed like Damon might follow, but then a classroom door opened down the hall, and a teacher emerged. Damon muttered something to his friends, and they scattered in different directions. None of them had noticed Ty standing in the shadow of the water fountain. He waited until they were gone before heading back to class, his mind racing. Who was this Layla, and how had Zoe managed to stand her ground like that? After school, he found out. Zoe was waiting for him by the front steps, and beside her stood the tall girl with braids. "This is my brother, Ty," Zoe said, beaming. "Ty, this is Layla. She's in my art class." Layla gave a small wave. "Nice to meet you. Your sister's got guts." "Thanks for stepping in today," Ty said, studying the girl curiously. There was something familiar about her. "No problem. Damon and his crew have been pulling this stuff for years. Someone needs to stand up to them." As they walked home together, Ty learned that Layla was a junior who had her own history with Damon's group. Last year, they'd targeted her younger brother after he joined the basketball team and outshone Damon during practice. "It got pretty bad," Layla explained. "They put gross stuff in his gym bag, spread rumors about him, the whole deal. My parents wanted to handle it through the school, but the principal just gave them detention for a week, which only made them sneakier." "So what did you do?" Zoe asked. Layla smiled. "I started documenting everything. Screenshots, recordings, witness statements. After a month, I had enough evidence that the school board had to take it seriously. Damon almost got expelled." "But they're still at it," Ty pointed out. "Yeah, but now they know I'm watching. They're more careful who they target." Layla looked at Zoe. "When I saw them cornering you, I figured they thought you were an easy mark. New kid, no connections." "They were wrong," Zoe said with more confidence than Ty had heard from her in weeks. Layla laughed. "Clearly, the look on Damon's face when you told him off, priceless." As they reached the intersection where Layla would head in a different direction, she turned to them both. "Listen, a bunch of us are meeting at the community center tomorrow after school. Kids who've dealt with Damon's crowd before. We look out for each other. You should come." After she left, Zoe couldn't stop smiling. "See? I told you yesterday was no big deal." Ty raised an eyebrow. "Getting cornered twice in 2 days is absolutely a big deal, but I'm proud of how you handled it today." "I just did what you and Grandpa always taught me," she said with a shrug. "Stand my ground, speak clearly, don't show fear." "And the text you sent me?" Zoe had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I knew you'd come running if I told you what was really happening. I wanted to handle it myself." And you did, Ty acknowledged. But next time tell me the truth. We're in this together, remember? That evening, they told their parents a carefully edited version of the day's events, focusing on the new friend Zoe had made rather than the confrontation. Their mother was delighted that Zoe was finally connecting with other students, and their father simply seemed relieved to see his daughter smiling again. Later, Ty called Grandpa Ray to update him. "This Layla sounds like a good ally," his grandfather said. "Smart girl, gathering evidence instead of escalating." "She invited us to meet other kids tomorrow after school," Ty told him. "Kids who've had problems with Damon before." "Strength in numbers," Grandpa Ray said approvingly. "The best way to handle bullies is to show them they're outnumbered, not to threaten or intimidate, just to make it clear their behavior won't be tolerated by the community." After they hung up, Ty did some research on his laptop. He found Layla's social media profiles and realized why she had seemed familiar. In several photos, she was wearing a GI at the local martial arts studio downtown. The same style Grandpa Ray had taught Ty and Zoe. The next day at school felt different. Ty noticed Layla in the hallway between classes, always surrounded by friends. Twice he spotted her checking in on younger students, a protective presence that seemed to come naturally to her. At lunch, Layla and two of her friends joined Ty and Zoe's table, effectively surrounding them with allies. Damon and his crew stayed, on the other side of the cafeteria, occasionally glancing their way but making no move to approach. "They won't try anything with all of us together," one of Layla's friends explained. "They only go after people they think are isolated." After school, Ty and Zoe followed Layla to the community center, a brick building a few blocks from campus. Inside, about 15 students of various ages had gathered in a meeting room. As they entered, Ty immediately noticed the atmosphere, relaxed but purposeful. These weren't scared kids hiding from bullies. They were organized and confident. A boy about Ty's age stepped forward to greet them. "I'm Chris," he said, extending his hand. "Layla said you might join us." "This is Ty and Zoe," Layla introduced them. "They're new in town and already on Damon's radar." There were knowing nods around the room. One by one, the others introduced themselves, each with their own story about Damon's group. Some had been targeted because of their appearance, others for their academic success, still others simply for being new or different. "We call ourselves the community," Chris explained as they all settled into chairs arranged in a circle. "Not very original, but it fits what we're trying to do. Create a community where everyone looks out for each other." "We're not about getting revenge or fighting back," a quiet girl named Prisha added. "We're about making sure nobody has to face them alone." As the meeting continued, Ty was impressed by their approach. The group had a system for reporting incidents, a buddy system for walking to and from school, and regular check-ins with school counselors who were sympathetic to their cause. "The adults want to help," Chris explained, "but they're limited by school policies and the fact that bullies are smart enough not to get caught by teachers. So we document everything and support each other until we have enough evidence for serious action." By the time the meeting ended, Ty felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. For the first time since moving to this town, he felt like he and Zoe weren't alone. As they walked home, Zoe chatted excitedly about the new friends she'd made. "Prisha's in my math class. I never knew she lived just a few blocks from us." Ty smiled, listening to his sister sound like her old self again. But part of him remained cautious. Damon and his friends wouldn't give up easily, especially now that Zoe and Ty had visibly aligned themselves with Layla's group. His instincts proved right the very next morning. As he opened his locker before first period, a folded note fell out. "Back off and mind your own business, new kid, or things get worse for your sister." Ty stared at the paper, a cold feeling settling in his stomach. The bullies were escalating, moving from verbal intimidation to threats, and somehow they'd gotten into his locker. He carefully folded the note and put it in his pocket. This was exactly the kind of evidence Layla had talked about collecting. But more importantly, it was a sign that Damon saw him as a threat now, which meant Zoe might be in more danger, not less. As he closed his locker, Ty made a decision. He wouldn't show Zoe the note, not yet. But he would step up his vigilance and he would make absolutely certain his sister was never alone at school again. What he didn't realize was that Damon had been watching from around the corner, gauging his reaction, and that the real challenge was yet to come. Thursday morning dawned with heavy rain clouds and a sense of unease that Ty couldn't shake. The note from his locker had kept him awake most of the night, his mind racing through worst-case scenarios and possible responses. He'd texted Layla about it, and her reply had been immediate. "Save the note, document everything, we'll talk at lunch." At breakfast, Ty noticed his sister seemed distracted, picking at her cereal without eating much. "Everything okay?" he asked quietly, while their parents moved around the kitchen in their usual morning rush. Zoe shrugged. "Just tired. Didn't sleep. Well?" Before he could press further, their mom dropped a stack of mail on the table. "Look what came, your grandfather's overnight package." The padded envelope bore Grandpa Ray's unmistakable handwriting. Ty opened it to find two small devices that looked like simple digital watches, along with a note. "Until I arrive Saturday. Panic buttons. Press both sides for 3 seconds to activate. Will call my phone and record audio. Use only if necessary. Love you both. Grandpa Ray." Ty showed Zoe under the table, away from their parents' view. Her eyes widened slightly, but she gave a small nod of understanding. "What did your grandfather send?" their father asked, pouring his coffee into a travel mug. "Just some photos from his dojo's tournament," Ty lied smoothly. "And a note about his visit this weekend." Their parents exchanged a glance. "About that," their mother began. "Dad called last night after you two went to bed. He's actually arriving today instead of Saturday. Something about an earlier flight being available." "That's great," Zoe said, genuine excitement breaking through her earlier mood. "Will you pick him up from the airport?" "Actually, he insisted on taking a taxi straight to your school." "Their father replied. "Said he wants to surprise you at the end of the day. He'll meet you out front at dismissal and then we'll all have dinner together tonight." As they walked to school, the watches securely fastened to their wrists but hidden under their sleeves, Ty noticed Zoe seemed more at ease. "Feeling better about Grandpa coming early?" he asked. She nodded. "Much better. I miss him." "Me too." Ty hesitated, then asked, "So what kept you up last night?" "Really?" Zoe was quiet for a few steps before answering. "I got some weird messages. Anonymous, someone made a fake account just to send them." Ty stopped walking. "What kind of messages? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you're already in overprotective brother mode," she said, tugging him forward to keep walking. "And they weren't that bad, just stuff like, watch your back and no one likes a snitch." "That's serious, Zoe. Those are threats." "I know. I took screenshots like Layla said to do. I was going to tell you today anyway." She looked up at him. "I'm not hiding things. I just needed to process it first, okay?" Ty nodded, though concern still gnawed at him. "We should tell Grandpa. When he gets here, definitely. He'll know what to do." At school, the halls were buzzing with unusual energy. Flyers had been posted overnight announcing Friday's pep rally before the big basketball game against their rival school. Damon, as team captain, was at the center of a crowd of admirers near the gym. Ty kept his distance, making sure to walk Zoe to her first class before heading to his own. Throughout the morning, he texted regularly with members of the community, checking in on Zoe when he couldn't be with her himself. By lunchtime, his nerves were frayed from constant vigilance. He joined Layla, Chris, and several others at their usual table, Zoe safely between him and Prisha. "Show them," Layla said after they'd settled. Ty pulled out the note, and Zoe reluctantly displayed the screenshots on her phone. The group examined them in silence. "They're escalating," Chris observed. "This is the pattern: verbal harassment, then isolation tactics, then intimidation through messages and notes." "What comes next?" Zoe asked quietly. Chris and Layla exchanged glances. "Usually some kind of public humiliation," Layla admitted. "They try to turn the whole school against you." "How?" "Different every time," Chris explained. For my brother, they stole his clothes during gym and he had to wear lost and found stuff all day. For Prisha, they spread rumors that she cheated on a test. My guess is they'll try something at tomorrow's pep rally, Layla said. Maximum audience. Ty felt cold dread settling in his stomach. So what do? We stay ahead of them, Chris replied firmly. First, you two are never alone, not for a minute. Second, we spread the word to our whole network to be on high alert at the rally. Third, we document everything, no matter how small. After lunch, Ty was on edge throughout his afternoon classes. His chemistry teacher even asked if he was feeling ill after he jumped at the sound of a dropped textbook. When the final bell rang, Ty hurried to meet Zoe at her locker. Relief washed over him when he saw her chatting with Prisha, both girls looking relaxed. Ready to see Grandpa? He asked, approaching them. Zoe nodded eagerly. Can't wait. I have so much to tell him. They said goodbye to Prisha and headed for the front entrance, joining the stream of students leaving for the day. Outside, rain fell steadily, creating a gray curtain around the school grounds. Ty scanned the parent pickup area, looking for their grandfather's familiar figure. I don't see him yet. He's probably running late with the rain, Zoe suggested. Should we wait under the overhang? They moved to the covered area near the main doors, watching as the crowd of students gradually thinned. After 15 minutes, Ty tried calling their grandfather, but it went straight to voicemail. That's weird, he muttered. Grandpa always answers. Zoe pulled out her own phone. I'll try Mom. A moment later, her face fell. Mom says Grandpa's flight was delayed because of the storm. He won't be in until tonight now. Ty frowned. Then, who was supposed to meet us here? Before Zoe could answer, a car horn honked nearby. Through the rain, they saw a blue sedan pulled up to the curb, its window rolling down to reveal Damon in the driver's seat. Hey, new kids, he called out. Need a ride in this weather? Your grandpa asked me to pick you up. Something about his flight being delayed. Ty instinctively put his arm around Zoe's shoulders. No thanks, he called back. We're good. Damon's friendly facade didn't slip. You sure? It's really coming down out there, and your folks asked specifically for me to get you since I live in your neighborhood. I'm on the student council with Ms. Chen. She can vouch for me. He gestured to where the math teacher was hurrying to. Her car. It was a clever play. Ms. Chen was indeed nearby, which made Damon's offer seem legitimate to anyone watching. But Ty wasn't fooled. Our mom is on her way. He lied smoothly. But thanks anyway. Damon's smile tightened. Suit yourself. Just trying to help. As the car pulled away, Zoe let out a shaky breath. How did he know about Grandpa? I don't know, Ty said grimly. But I'm guessing he overheard us talking or saw the package this morning. Either way, we need to get home. The rain was falling harder now, and the school grounds had emptied except for a few stragglers. Ty texted their mother, explaining that they'd missed their grandfather and asking if she could pick them up, but she responded that she was stuck in a meeting for another hour. Looks like we're walking, he told Zoe. They were about to step out into the downpour when a voice called from behind them. Ty, Zoe, wait up. They turned to see Chris jogging toward them, an umbrella in hand. Layla texted me to check if you guys got picked up okay. Need a lift? My mom's right over there. He pointed to a minivan idling at the far end of the parking. Lot of relief flooded through Ty. That would be amazing, thanks. As they huddled under Chris's umbrella and hurried toward the van, Ty scanned the parking lot nervously. The blue sedan was nowhere in sight, but he couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. Chris's mother was warm and chatty, asking about their grandfather's visit as she navigated the rain-slicked streets toward their house. Ty let Zoe handle most of the conversation while he kept an eye out for any cars that might be following them. By the time they pulled up to their house, he was fairly certain they hadn't been tailed. Thanks so much for the ride, Zoe said as they prepared to dash through the rain to their front door. Anytime, Chris's mother replied with a genuine smile. Chris tells me you're joining the community. It's a wonderful group. Helped my son a lot last year. Inside the house, Ty immediately checked all the doors and windows while Zoe called their mother to confirm they'd made it home safely. Mom says Grandpa's new flight gets in at 8:30, she reported after hanging up. Dad's going to pick him up from the airport. Ty nodded, finally allowing himself to relax slightly. We need to tell him everything that's happened as soon as he gets here. They spent the evening doing homework and preparing for their grandfather's arrival, both jumping at every car sound outside. When headlights finally swept across the living room window at nearly 9:30, they rushed to the door. Grandpa Ray looked exactly the same as always, tall and straight-backed, despite his 72 years, with the same warm smile that never failed to make them feel safe. He hugged them both tightly before stepping back to look them over. "You've both grown," he declared, "but something tells me it's not just in inches." His eyes, sharp as ever, took in their tense postures and watchful gazes. "We have a lot to talk about, I think." Later, after their parents had gone to bed, Grandpa Ray sat with them in the kitchen, listening intently as they recounted everything: the bullying, the community, the note in Ty's locker, the messages to Zoe, and Damon's appearance after school. "He knew about your delayed flight," Ty finished. "Somehow he knew and tried to use it to get us into his car." Their grandfather's expression had grown increasingly grave. When they finished, he was silent for a long moment, his weathered hands folded on the table. "You've both handled this remarkably well," he said finally. "Standing your ground, finding allies, documenting everything. Exactly the right approach. But it's getting worse," Zoe said quietly. "And everyone thinks something big will happen at tomorrow's pep rally." Grandpa Ray nodded slowly. "Then we'll be ready. I'm coming to school with you tomorrow." When someone uses intimidation, humiliation, or fear to control others, they're not showing strength. His gaze swept the gymnasium. They're showing weakness. True strength, true courage, is found in those who stand up to such tactics, not with violence or retaliation, but with dignity and compassion. He gestured toward the scattered papers. "These images tell us nothing about the person they're meant to mock, but they tell us everything about the person who created them." Students were looking uncomfortably at the papers in their hands now, many letting them drop to the floor as if they'd suddenly become distasteful to touch. Damon's smirk had faded, replaced by uncertainty, as his planned humiliation wasn't going as expected. And then, from the back of the gym, a clear voice rang out, "I'm not afraid." All heads turned to see Zoe walking forward, her steps measured and her head high. Prisha walked beside her along with two other girls Ty recognized from the community group. "My name is Zoe," she continued, her voice growing stronger as she moved through the parting crowd. "I'm new here, and yes, sometimes I've been scared, but I'm not afraid anymore." She reached the center of the gym, stopping a few feet from Damon, whose confident posture had visibly wilted. "I'm not afraid because I've learned that bullies only have the power we give them." She looked around at the assembled students. "And I choose not to give mine away." A ripple of murmurs spread through the gym, punctuated by scattered applause that quickly grew louder. Principal Wong had recovered from his initial shock and stepped forward, his face tight with anger. "Damon, my office. Now, the rest of you, please take your seats." As Damon slunk toward the exit, followed by a stern-faced vice principal, Grandpa Ray placed a gentle hand on Zoe's shoulder. "Would you like to help me with the rest of the demonstration?" he asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. Zoe nodded, her composure still intact despite the lingering stares. For the next 10 minutes, Grandpa Ray and Zoe led the assembly through simple exercises in balance and centering. What had started as an uncomfortable scene of public humiliation had transformed into something unexpected, a real lesson in standing your ground with grace under pressure. By the time the basketball team burst through their paper banner to thunderous applause, the mood in the gym had shifted completely. Students who had never spoken to Zoe before were stopping to introduce themselves, and even some of Damon's usual supporters were keeping their distance from the controversy. After the rally, as students filed out of the gym, Ty made his way to his sister's side. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Zoe took a deep breath and nodded. "Actually, yeah, that was not what I expected to happen today." Layla appeared beside them, a proud smile on her face. That was amazing, Zoe. You completely turned it around on them. It wasn't just me, Zoe insisted. It was Grandpa and all of you being there. Grandpa Ray joined them, brushing off compliments from passing teachers. You did the hard part, Zoe. You chose courage in a moment designed to make you feel powerless. That's not something anyone else can do for you. As they left the gymnasium, Ty noticed Chris waving frantically from near the main office. When they approached, he pulled them into an empty classroom. You're not going to believe this, he said, barely containing his excitement. Principal Wong found the original photos on Damon's phone, the ones he manipulated for those flyers. And guess what else he found? Screenshots of all the threatening messages they sent you both, plus a whole group chat where they were planning everything. Ty's eyes widened. Seriously? They kept evidence of their own bullying? Chris nodded eagerly. They thought they were untouchable. Never even occurred to them that an adult might check their phones. Damon, Riley, and 2 others are suspended pending a disciplinary hearing next week. The news spread quickly. By the end of the day, the school was buzzing with discussion about what had happened at the rally. Opinions were divided, with some students insisting Damon had just been joking around and others arguing that he'd crossed a serious line. What wasn't in dispute was Zoe's response. Even those who defended Damon had to admit that the new girl had shown remarkable poise in a difficult situation. As they walked home with Grandpa Ray that afternoon, Ty noticed his sister walking taller, her usual nervous glances replaced by calm awareness of her surroundings. Think it's really over? He asked as their house came into view. Grandpa Ray considered the question thoughtfully. The specific threat from Damon? Possibly. The need to stand your ground in life? Never. Zoe nodded in understanding. We still need the community. Always, their grandfather agreed. True strength is never found in isolation. It grows in connection with others who share your values. That evening, as they sat on the back porch watching the sunset, Ty reflected on how much had changed in just 1 week. They'd arrived in this town feeling like outsiders, vulnerable and alone. Now they were part of something bigger than themselves, a community built on mutual support and shared courage. Damon and his friends had tried to tear them down, but in doing so, they'd inadvertently helped Ty and Zoe find their place and their power. You know, Grandpa Ray said, seeming to read Ty's thoughts, sometimes the greatest challenges in our lives become our greatest opportunities for growth. Zoe leaned her head against their grandfather's shoulder. I just wish it hadn't been so scary getting there. The things most worth doing are often the scariest, he replied with a gentle smile. But now you know something important about yourselves, something no one can ever take away. As darkness fell around them, Ty felt a deep sense of peace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but they would face them together, standing tall. Monday. Morning felt different as Ty and Zoe walked to school together. The weekend had passed in a blur of family time with Grandpa Ray, hiking at the local nature preserve, practicing Tai Chi in the backyard, and talking for hours about everything from martial arts philosophy to their hopes for the future. Their grandfather had left Sunday evening, but his presence lingered in the newfound confidence in Zoe's stride and the relaxed set of Ty's shoulders. Do you think people will still be talking about what happened? Zoe asked as they approached the school building. Ty shrugged. Probably, but it doesn't matter so much now, does it? She thought about it for a moment, then shook her head. Not really. It happened, we handled it, life goes on. The words sounded like something Grandpa Ray would say, and they both smiled at the realization. Inside the school, the usual Monday, morning chaos reigned, students hurrying to lockers, finishing last-minute homework, catching up on weekend gossip. A few heads turned as Ty and Zoe passed, but the stares lacked the malice they'd grown accustomed to in previous weeks. Zoe, Ty, Prisha called, waving from down the hall. She hurried toward them, excitement clear on her face. Have you heard? Principal Wong wants to see us all in the conference room before first period. Who's all? Ty asked, instantly on alert. The community. Well, some of us. You two, me, Layla, Chris, and a few others. Ms. Torres sent out emails last night. Zoe checked her phone. I didn't get anything. She probably sent it to your school account, Prisha explained. Come on, we don't want to be late. As they followed her toward the administrative wing, Ty felt a flicker of worry. Had they somehow gotten in trouble for what happened at the rally? It seemed unlikely. They'd been the targets, not the instigators, but years of navigating school politics had taught him that fairness wasn't always guaranteed. His concern eased somewhat when they entered the conference room to find Layla and Chris already seated at the large table, looking relaxed as they chatted with Ms. Torres, the school counselor. Over the next few minutes, 6 other students joined them, all members of the community group. Principal Wong arrived last, carrying a stack of folders and wearing an expression Ty couldn't quite read. "Thank you all for coming," he began, taking his seat at the head of the table. "I appreciate you giving up part of your morning. This won't take long." He opened one of the folders and glanced at its contents before continuing. "Friday's incident at the pep rally has forced us to confront some uncomfortable truths about the culture at Westridge High. It's clear that what happened to Zoe wasn't an isolated event, but part of a pattern that has affected many students." Around the table, heads nodded in solemn agreement. "Ms. Torres has made me aware of your group, the community I believe you call yourselves, and the support system you've created. Frankly, I'm impressed by your initiative and disappointed that you felt it necessary to form such a group without adult involvement." He paused, looking genuinely troubled. "That's on us, the administration and faculty. We should have seen what was happening and addressed it sooner." The room was silent as students exchanged surprised glances. This wasn't the direction any of them had expected the meeting to take. "So," Principal Wong continued, straightening in his chair, "I've asked you here today for 2 reasons. First, to thank you for supporting each other when the adults in this building failed to do so adequately. And second, to ask for your help in making sure nothing like this happens again." Ms. Torres spoke up for the first time. "We're forming an official anti-bullying committee with real authority to implement changes in school policy. We'd like all of you to be founding members if you're willing." For the next 30 minutes, Principal Wong and Ms. Torres outlined their vision for the committee: regular meetings with administration, input on disciplinary actions in bullying cases, peer mediation training, and school-wide educational initiatives. "Of course, this doesn't replace the need for adult oversight," Principal Wong emphasized, "but your perspectives and experiences are invaluable in shaping how we approach these issues." As the meeting wrapped up and students prepared to head to first period, the principal asked Ty and Zoe to stay behind for a moment. "I want to personally apologize for what you've experienced since arriving at our school," he said once they were alone. "That's not who we are, or at least not who we want to be." Zoe nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Thank you, but honestly, I think what happened Friday might have been necessary in a way." Principal Wong raised his eyebrows. "How so?" "It brought everything into the open," she explained. "Now people can't pretend it's not happening anymore." Ty watched his sister with quiet pride. The nervous girl who'd hidden her problems for weeks was gone, replaced by someone who could articulate difficult truths with clarity and confidence. "You're right," the principal acknowledged. "Sometimes it takes a public incident to force change. I just wish you hadn't had to be the catalyst." As they left the office with passes to first period, Ty bumped his shoulder gently against Zoe's. "Grandpa would be proud of what you just said in there." "I was thinking the same thing," she admitted with a small smile. The rest of the day passed, in a blur of classes, conversations, and increasingly excited text messages from community members about the new committee. By lunchtime, word had spread throughout the school, and students who had never spoken up before were approaching them with stories of their own experiences with Damon's group. "It's like a dam broke," Chris observed as they gathered at their usual table. "Everyone's talking about it now." Layla nodded, her expression a mix of satisfaction and wariness. "That's good, but we need to be careful. Damon still has supporters, and not everyone thinks he did anything wrong." As if summoned by her words, a group of basketball players entered the cafeteria, their usual boisterous energy noticeably subdued without Damon's leadership. They kept their distance from the community table, but their glares communicated volumes. "They're blaming us for getting their captain suspended before the big game," Chris explained quietly. "Coach had to name a new starter with 2 days' notice. Ty watched the players settle at their table across the room. Do you think they'll cause problems? Layla considered the question. Maybe, but not like before. They know they're being watched now and they don't have Damon calling the shots. Plus, Prisha added with a slight smile, they saw what happened when they tried to humiliate Zoe. It didn't exactly work out as planned. After lunch, Ty was surprised to find one of the basketball players, he thought his name was Andre, waiting for him outside his history classroom. Can I talk to you for a sec? The boy asked, shifting uncomfortably from foot to foot. Ty nodded cautiously, moving to a less crowded spot near the water fountain. Look, Andre began, not quite meeting Ty's eyes. I just wanted to say, what Damon did at the rally wasn't cool. I didn't know he was going to do that. None of us did. Ty studied the other boy's face, looking for signs of insincerity but finding only genuine discomfort. He said it was just going to be a harmless prank, Andre continued. Something to welcome the new kids, make everyone laugh. We didn't know he was sending those messages or putting notes in lockers. That's messed up. Why are you telling me this? Ty asked, genuinely curious. Andre glanced down the hallway, where his teammates were watching from a distance. Because we're not all like that. And because some of us think maybe your sister did us a favor. A favor? Damon was getting out of control, pushing people around, acting like he owned the place. The team, we're better than that. Or we should be. He hesitated, then added, anyway, I just wanted you to know not all of us were part of it. As Andre walked away, Ty realized something important was happening, something beyond just Damon's suspension or the new anti-bullying committee. The balance was shifting at Westridge High, creating space for people to choose which side they wanted to be on. By the end of the school day, this shift was even more apparent. Students who had always been bystanders were speaking up, sharing their own stories or simply acknowledging what they had witnessed. Teachers who had turned a blind eye were suddenly vigilant, intervening in hallway interactions that would have gone unchallenged a week before. As Ty and Zoe walked home together, they discussed these changes, marveling at how quickly the school atmosphere was transforming. It won't last, Zoe said pragmatically. People will forget, go back to old habits. Some will, Ty agreed. But not everyone. And we'll still be here, still part of the community, still standing up. She smiled at that. Standing tall, like Grandpa says. At home, they found a package waiting on the porch, a small box with their grandfather's return address. Inside were 2 simple leather bracelets, each stamped with a single Chinese character. The note read, Yong, Yong, courage. Not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. Wear these to remember what you've learned about yourselves. Love, Grandpa Ray. Ty helped Zoe fasten hers around her wrist, then held out his arm so she could do the same for him. The leather was soft against his skin, a gentle but constant reminder. That evening, they video-called their grandfather to thank him for the gifts and update him on the day's events. His weathered face filled the screen, eyes crinkling with pride as they described the meeting with Principal Wong and the changes already taking place at school. Remember, he told them before signing off, what you've started there is important, but it's only the beginning. Real change takes time and consistent effort. There will be setbacks. We know, Zoe assured him. But we're not alone anymore. You never were, he replied with a gentle smile. The next morning they left for school wearing their new bracelets, a visible symbol of the invisible strength they'd discovered within themselves. As they approached the building, Layla, Chris, and Prisha were waiting at the front steps, waving them over with excited expressions. You won't believe this, Layla said as they approached. 3 more students asked to join the community this morning, and Ms. Torres wants us to help plan an assembly about bullying prevention for next month. Chris nodded eagerly. And Principal Wong is talking about making your grandfather's presentation an annual event. He said it was the most impactful assembly we've had in years. As they entered the school together, Ty noticed Damon's friends huddled by the trophy case watching their group pass. There was still hostility in some of their gazes, but uncertainty in others. The power dynamic had shifted and they knew it. In class that morning, Ty's English teacher announced a special writing assignment: Courage in Everyday Life. As students around him groaned at the extra work, Ty found himself smiling. Just a week ago, he might have struggled with the topic, might have written something generic about firefighters or soldiers. Now he had a different story to tell, one about a quiet girl who found her voice when it mattered most. About friends who stood together against intimidation. About the kind of courage that didn't make headlines but changed lives nonetheless. At lunch, the community table had expanded to accommodate new faces, students who had once been silent, observers but were now ready to be part of something bigger than themselves. Zoe sat at the center of the group, animated as she shared ideas for the upcoming assembly. Watching her, Ty felt a surge of pride so strong it almost overwhelmed him. His sister had transformed from a victim into a leader, her natural warmth and empathy now channeled into helping others find their own courage. And he had changed too. The constant vigilance that had tensed his shoulders for weeks had given way to something steadier, a quiet readiness that wasn't defined by fear. As the conversation flowed around him, Ty absently touched the leather bracelet on his wrist, tracing the character for courage with his thumb. Grandpa Ray had been right all along. True strength wasn't found in dominating others or in never experiencing fear. It was found in standing tall when everything and everyone tried to make you shrink. In protecting what mattered without becoming what you fought against. In building connections that transformed individual vulnerability into collective resilience. These weren't lessons that could be taught in a single assembly or learned in a moment of crisis. They were truths to be discovered daily, practiced consistently and passed on to others. Across the table, Zoe caught his eye and smiled, a smile that carried understanding beyond words. They had come to this new town as outsiders, searching for a place to belong. What they had found instead was something far more valuable: the knowledge that belonging wasn't about fitting in, but about standing up, standing tall, together, no matter what came next.